Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 317. Tonight, we are going to talk with our wonderful guest, Candice Burt, about setting the new unsupported FKT around the Tahoe Rim Trail, which is a stellar route. I've only run a few sections of it, very, very short sections. Never even thought about, well, I've thought about it, but never considered piecing the whole thing together and trying to do it all in one push. But our guest tonight just set the fastest unsupported time around that thing. In lieu of a race, because she was originally training for a big race, Badwater 135. Don't know if you've heard of it. Real tough one. But rather than, the race got canceled, so rather than go down there with all this training and not do anything, she's like, I'm going to go set an FKT. And we're going to talk to Candice all about that on tonight's show, plus a bunch of other things. It's been a long time since we've had her on the show. So welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode 317. The show begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay! Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 317.
We're officially up there. I can't believe it's episode 317.
I can, because last week was 316.
And you almost have the audio thing figured out.
Almost have the audio thing figured out. Even as we just went to the intro clip there, I'm like, oh, is it audio playing?
Is it working? Is it working?
Because normally it plays in our headset, but I couldn't hear it. So maybe it was quiet for the chat.
Somebody in the chat room is asking, new music? What was playing back there?
Probably silence. Something obviously wasn't playing. So let us know if you guys can hear us. This is one of those things where you change one thing in this software and everything just messes up. So welcome to the show. We're very excited about tonight's episode because we get to talk with a badass ultra runner and race director and all-around adventurer, Candice Burt. We're going to talk to her about her recent unsupported FKT on the Tahoe Rim Trail. Huge effort. I believe it's 100 and I'm going to look at Candice and just see if we're not ahead. 171 miles, right?
Candice is just going to be frowning at you.
171 miles and an infinite amount of vert. I don't actually know the vert stat, but we'll find out. We'll find out all of the stuff on it. But it's a brutal trail that has had a number of FKTs go down in recent times, but really wanted to highlight Candice's performance out there being unsupported and really having to do it all on her own, which is a pretty cool adventure. But of course, before we introduce our guests, we have a couple of things we'll talk about at the top of the show. First, we are live, and it's not just me.
What's up, everyone? Hi.
How are you?
Good. This is like the first time we've seen each other all day.
Yeah, normally
That's a lie. We've been looking at each other's faces since the end of February.
Good morning. Since the end of February, yeah. I forgot.
What's up, everyone? Kim Tashima Newberry here, as always. If you're new, welcome. We are live. We'll be bringing Candice on in just a second. Because we are live, you can interact with our guests, so feel free to ask questions in our chat room. There's already some very excited people ready to get chatting about the FKT.
Yeah, whenever we have a guest on like Candice, people get really excited. She's obviously well known in the ultra scene.
Candice was one of the first female ultra runners that I was aware of.
Yeah, she's been setting records, winning races, setting FKTs, race directing. She's really well known in the community for putting on stellar events, really difficult, beautiful events around the West Coast, not just in Washington State, though Washington right now is her current residence. So we have a lot to talk about with her. And again, just before we introduce her, we do have some individuals we'd like to thank at the top of the show. They are the reason this show can happen, how we're able to do reviews on this channel, films, all that stuff. And it is our Patreon supporters. If you go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner, for as little as $1 a month, you support everything we do here. And for $3 a month, you get to join our daily live streams. We've been doing live streams every single day for the last 99 days. Tomorrow
is Daily Brew 100.
We call it Daily Brew.
Yeah.
It's our daily live stream where we drink coffee. We talk about running, sport, endurance, life, pandemic, whatever. We talk about it. And tomorrow is our 100th episode. So if you would like to join us and support us, it's been a lot of fun. For $3, you basically get 100 hours of content.
Some of it's good. Some of it's fine.
But it's all better than Netflix. All of it. No guarantees. So thank you to our Patreon crew, 2 individuals in particular at that top tier who really are supporting us in just wonderful, wonderful ways and have for a long time. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong. Chris is a wonderful human being, and we actually just talked to Chris, and Hong Kong's going through some stuff.
A lot going on
over there right now, but Chris has been a longtime supporter, so we love to shout him out and send him love. And Brian Sands, another longtime supporter. Brian Sands is just a badass athlete who ran his first marathon when he was 50 years old after losing over 100 pounds. Ran his first ultra, his first 50K. He's currently training for some big races whenever races come back, but he'll be ready. He's a really, really standout dude. So shout out to those two individuals. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful guest back to the show. We just talked with her before the show there. She reminded us that the last time she was on, she was coming to us live from, I think, the back of a truck or something in the middle of nowhere, just hoping for a couple bars of cell signal. And we managed to make the show work. So without further ado, welcome back to the show with better signal, Candice Burt.
Yay!
Thank you guys so much for having me on. Hopefully this will be a better signal. But
Already.
I do live in the mountains. Oh,
yeah.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. But already, like, the fact we can see you and hear you and it's in sync, huge step up.
Yes, that is huge. Because I remember last time you're like, it's not working. So I got my phone out and I'm propping it on, like, I don't know why I had pillows in the truck, but it's a good thing to have in your truck.
Of course.
So I was like propping it in the corner and it was a little stressful, but we got it set up and I think we had a good episode nonetheless.
Yeah, what I come to the conclusion after doing so many of these episodes is like, I don't care what the video looks like. Video is going to crap out. I mean, we had Ann Trayson on just via phone. And it's like, ultimately, we love people sitting here watching us live, but it's the audio, right? And as a podcast host, good, clean audio is kind of the key and just trying to get the guest to be able to hear you and hear them. That's all that really matters. So doing the show out of the truck, I was trying to think of what was that episode, and you reminded us it was after your Tianaway 100 experience, which was an amazing race. Does that truck still exist? Because I know that you, as a race director, have been driving to remote parts of the West Coast, and was that the truck that like bit the dust?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I've had a number of vehicles that have bit the dust. I think I was in my Tundra. I would always buy used vehicles because I thought, well, I don't want to lose money buying them new. But I lost so much money buying them used. I finally just bought a new Tundra truck a few years ago. So I think I had it for that interview. But
okay.
I've lost some vehicles and trailers and tires and everything.
I feel like you go ahead.
Well, we're in the hauling business with 200-mile
Yes.
races. So we have to haul this huge number of supplies from Washington State to California to Utah, back to Washington, back to California. So we have aid stations along the whole 200-mile course, and it's just an outrageous number of supplies. And sometimes I think we're in the business of just moving stuff. Like, maybe I should get rid of the race part and move stuff for people.
I remember when we were hosting
easier.
It'd be easier. Like, I remember when we were getting ready for our first Tiger Claw, Candice reached out to us and was like, listen, I have so much race supplies, like everything you could possibly imagine. If there is anything you need, you let me know. And I was like, oh, maybe some tables or something. And bless you, Candice, because you were like, let me talk to my staff in Bellingham or my staff in these other cities. Like, you have satellite lockers, I'm assuming, of just gear around Washington State, because you probably have so much of it, right?
We have a few locations, yeah.
We cannot disclose the locations of the race gear, but I can imagine by this point you've just collected so much. So let's actually start there, because we'd be remiss in the fact of not mentioning that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and as a race director, you've had to make some big decisions with your races, some of the biggest distances and also highly attended races out there. You've had to make some really tough decisions, and your race organization and everything has sort of had to take a step back from in-person stuff, but you've delved into virtual. How has this been for you guys over the last few months? Has it been really, really tough, or have you found new ways of being creative? Like, what's it been like for a destination?
I think it's that whole variety of emotions. It's a roller coaster, really, for anybody in this business, like and we did jump in on the virtual race idea because we had people who really wanted something to focus on, and they wanted a goal. And so creating these virtual races was an opportunity for us to keep employees on hand and working, and me working, and also bring in some income when we were losing so much money. And it was it's been devastating to see race after race after race get canceled when we've worked so hard. And we've really been trying to we were really trying to get Bigfoot to work in August, but we had to make the hard decision a few weeks ago to give the runners some time and notice that we were going to cancel because things just weren't pointing that direction here in Washington State. And the responsible thing to do was to cancel so we can give them some transfer credit.
Yeah.
So it's been really challenging, and we're trying to be a lot more give even more back to the runners than we would if, it was just a normal race cancellation. But it's hard because when everything's canceled, we're really looking at our livelihood is just going away. So the virtual races are an amazing way to support lots of directors out there. I know other directors are holding on, just by these virtual races right now. So hopefully we'll be able to get back to it safely. But if we can't, the right thing to do is to cancel, and some race directors choose to do that sooner. And I think that's the right decision for them. And we all have to, I think, support each other as a community and allow each director to make their own choice the way that they need to. But safety first, always. I mean, that's what we're here to do when we're managing a race, is to take care of those runners. So hard decisions. Many days that Crystal and I have just cried about, I can't believe we can't, we feel like we're letting people down by not fulfilling that race for them, but everybody also understands. So it's been, devastating, but also really interesting to see how many people have emailed us even to say, we just want you to keep our entry fee. And that is humbling beyond words. I mean, more people have done that than I could even say. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And as directors of only one in-person event, it is not our livelihood, but we know so many race directors, it is, in-person events are everything for their businesses. And it's been really, it's difficult knowing what goes on behind the scenes there. It's like, it's not an easy decision to go like, okay, the race is canceled, but we're all good. It's just not the case. It's like when you cancel a race, that's rent, that's food, that's feeding your family. Like there's so many things that go into play here. And I know that we're going to get individual questions. I know in the chat room here of like, is this race going to happen? And is this race going to happen? I don't think we need to touch on that because that obviously that is the position of the race director to communicate with the racers. And I can only imagine how much of it is unfolding in real time for you. For us, it was like hour to hour. We were going, oh, maybe we can. Nope, can't. Oh, but wait, maybe. Nope, can't. So I can imagine it's just been days and weeks of like shrugging, just not knowing, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, we've taken the steps to create mitigation plans. So we've submitted those to permit districts, but really it's a waiting game. So if runners want to know, is this race going to happen? They should know that we'll let them know immediately when we have more information. And we aren't going to let anybody into any of the races until we know for a fact that it's going to be safe to have this many more runners and that the race is happening. So as much as we'd like to take more entry fees, we can't, in good conscience, we can't let people in until we really feel that this race, the races will happen. So right now it's the Tahoe 200, 100K, 25K, and then the Moab 240. But the Moab 240, we're really certain is going to happen. Again, it is a pandemic. It could not happen, but we're certain enough. We have all our permits. Utah's pretty open. We have a mitigation plan that I think will make it safe. So yeah, other than that, people need to be patient, unfortunately. It's hard. I know. It's hard for me.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you're not only a race director, you're obviously a racer and a runner and a person who participates in other events that are put on by other race directors. So in that kind of transitioning the conversation in that direction, you were training for Badwater. You've been training for a long time. I know this race requires a certain level of preparedness, both heat training, distance training, all sorts. So how was that experience as a runner on the other side, basically preparing as though the race is happening and only finding out the race is canceled here pretty close to the event date and then having to transition really quickly? How was that for you as a running experience?
It was really eye-opening. I think as a runner, I initially thought, let's wait, let's try to make this happen no matter what. And I'll wait and see. But when the race was canceled 10 days out and I was literally driving to the event so I could do a little heat training first, I'd packed everything. It was really difficult. And I think that with a 200-mile race, it's going to be at least as difficult with all the logistics and the crew and all that. So I just felt like, I feel like as a race director, I have enough knowledge. If it doesn't look clear a month out, it probably isn't a good idea to hold it. So my thought with each of these big events is decide a month away. If you're going to wait up until, I think you can decide a month away. And if you push it closer, I think even the runners aren't going to quite know how difficult that is to be en route to the event and get canceled. So when I switched plans and said, okay, I'm going to go run the Tahoe Rim Trail, I didn't have anything I needed other than I'd somehow thought to bring poles, which was great. So I had my Lakey poles, and I would never need them for Badwater, but I had thrown them in like just in case. And I didn't even have trail shoes. Like zero. Like so stupid. You're like, how could you not have trail shoes?
Like this truck.
At least just like a pair in there somewhere.
I know, like I imagine your truck, you have pillows. And I would think like, oh, maybe some trail shoes in there.
Because we definitely have random trail shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got weird shit in our car. Yeah. Weird adventures.
I cleaned the whole thing out. Like, I'm like, okay, I actually brought a small SUV because it's better gas mileage and it's faster and more fun to drive. So I took everything out, cleaned it, and just put the essentials. I was so proud of myself. I was like cutting it close. Like, I won't need anything else. And then the race is canceled. And I had to go, when I got to Tahoe, I was like, get stuff. So even though I normally get shoes and the like through my sponsors, I went over to Alpenglow and they helped me out and got me some shoes. And yeah, it was sort of a desperate search for like the right filter because I knew what I wanted, but I couldn't get it.
Yeah. So
it was hard.
We have a lot of live questions here. Let's actually get to those because I realized the question I was going to ask might have a longer answer. But
okay.
What do we got?
Yeah. So you're kind of explaining this on the fly situation of changing your plans. And Jim Farley asked in the chat room, how did you decide on this particular route for the FKT? And do you have any particular personal significance to it?
I am just completely obsessed with this trail to the point where people around me are like, oh, stop talking. Like, you talk about this all the time. So I think that it's been an obsession of mine since 2012. And I'd made a supported attempt at it back then, but I just didn't have the experience, I think, mentally to push through. I got to mile 110 and was like, oh, this is too much. And I gave up. So it's just been that monkey on my back since then. And the place holds some sort of significance to me. It feels like on a deeper level. So I actually worked in Lake Tahoe my first year in college at a natural food store. And it was like my first time really on my own, learning new things. And I think that it's always just felt like a really special place to me, exploring those trails. And I think that it's been this seed that's been growing in my head. So last November, I decided to go out and do the whole thing unsupported. And I wasn't sure if it would work out for a record, but I knew I wanted to just finish the whole trail since I'd quit it multiple times in the past. So I went out there with a little more gear, a little more food than I needed, a little more safety equipment, heavier pack, and finished it in 72 hours. And I knew, having done it in that many hours, how much time I had wasted, just like being inexperienced. So, and the reason that didn't count as an unsupported record is because 10 miles from the finish, my hallucinations became so intense, I called for help. So I had a friend come out and meet me, and I didn't care at the time because I thought the time was a lot slower than I wanted to post anyway. So that's sort of the significance. So I knew as soon as Badwater was canceled, I was like, all right, I'm going for it. I'm going for the Tahoe Rim Trail.
Was there a moment this year that, like, did you plan on doing this at some point this year? Is that sort of why that was the first place replacement for Badwater, or is it because of this personal significance?
I think that I had thought all along Badwater was likely to be canceled. So in the back of my mind, my replacement would be possibly the Tahoe Rim Trail. But as we got closer to the race, Chris, the race director, became more sure that the race was going to happen. And so I was like, okay, here we go, 120-degree heat, yay. So there was a part of me that was like, thank goodness.
That's crazy that you have relief from not running Badwater, only to be like, let's go do a 171-mile FKT attempt around one of the toughest trails in Northern California. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's a big part of me, I think, that is fueled and fed by being out there and just exploring like that on my own. And so I love the idea of just getting to get out and have that time in nature. Since March, I've been at home with my 2 kids nonstop. And so it was like, this was my trip where I was like, okay, I get a little time to do my own run. And I think, when I switched gears, it was like, okay, this is really going to be some good internal time that I can go back home and appreciate being with the family because I've taken that personal time.
Yeah. We still have lots of questions from the live chat. Let's get to a couple of those and we'll start diving into it.
Yeah, a question from Brian. Brian says, Candice, would you have opted for a go at supported instead of unsupported if the situation was different?
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about the supported. I do think that with support, it's within my reach. Absolutely. It's something that if my recovery goes well enough now post, unsupported, I would be very tempted to go out at the end of August and with a few people and sort of see, because you carry so much weight. You just really have to hike a lot more early on than you would if somebody was giving you stuff. And I went 38 miles with 3 liters of water.
Wow.
You have to manage your pace when you're going that far. And you also don't know, what if I need more calories? You're not eating quite as much as you'd like because you're trying to save a little bit for later. So yeah, I'm very curious. I think it would be fun to go after. I actually think it's doable, probably unsupported. But training for Badwater, I didn't have a pack on ever. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges doing Tahoe Rim Trail versus Badwater. Was a huge heavy pack, was really painful.
So we've talked about this on the show multiple times with FKTs in the past and guests and stuff that have said that from versus supported versus unsupported versus self-supported. So where does this FKT fall, and basically why is this the route that you chose this round, self-supported versus unsupported?
I think for me, the unsupported, there's sort of this purist mentality of if I go unsupported, it's all sort of on me to see how fast I can go. It's not how good of a crew I have. It's not how many pacers I have at the right time or my gear. Well, to some degree, for sure, it's gear. So I really love unsupported because I think that it's harder, and I think that, and I really enjoy that alone time, whereas I think some people would probably hate it. Because they would get scared or lonely during that time. But for me, it's sort of almost a spiritual quest. So I've always leaned toward that direction, and I'm probably a little bit more of an introvert when I'm running in that way, where I actually just really enjoy being out there on the trail. There's definitely times, don't get me wrong, where it would be great to have some company. But I love unsupported. I just think it's just purely how fast can you move on a trail with everything you've got, and really also what's the upper limit mileage wise that we can go. 170 miles. I think we can go a lot further unsupported potentially without a huge pack. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of does come down to gear, and gear is such a big part of this equation. Go ahead.
Sorry. And you were talking about your pack. There's been a couple questions. Do you know how heavy your pack was?
Oh man, I wish I did, but I did not weigh it. I do know that I had 11,500 calories to start, and I only consumed 7,000. And I didn't carry a lot of extra, but I had multiple sets of batteries and headlamps just in case, and then a spot device and my phone, a water filter. I did bring a down jacket, and I needed it, actually. You'd be surprised. It gets cold in a few spots. So there was a few things like that. But with water and full calories, I mean, it seems like it would be at least 10 pounds. At least. Yeah. Wow. Probably more. I don't know. Sorry. I never weigh
11,000 calories. I feel like calories always end up weighing so much.
Yeah, we were actually talking specifically about your FKT, like right after you had said it and announced it.
We were talking about it.
We were talking about it on our trail run. We were just kind of doing the math in our head of like...
I was like, I saw Candice putting out all her nutrition and picking what was...
Like, what's the
lightest, most calorie dense?
Exactly. So we're thinking in our heads, you want the most calorie dense, lightest food that you can, but
palatable.
Then also it has to be palatable. You have to want to eat this for hours and hours and hours. What did you find yourself drawn to? Real food, gels, a mix of everything? Did you have backups on backups on backups in case your palate wasn't ready? Where were you at with all that?
You know, I like to tell myself, like, be tough about food. Like, it's not about enjoying food when you're on something like this. It's about getting the calories in. So I take food that I know will give me calorie density. The most fun calories to consume are gels. So like the Spring Energy gels were great. Those were easy to get down. There's a lot of liquid in them. And if you do the 250 packet gels, they work really well. But also like any powdered calories are really great because you can just put them in your water.
Right.
And I wish I had had more of those, but those you've got to be careful because they can be a little heavy. And then I had these peanut butter bars that were super dense, and I brought way too many of them. So I feel like I had so many. I brought 16 of them, so they were most of my calories, and I put them in my mouth and be like, I could not swallow them without drinking water because it was just so. They're delicious normally, but ugh. So I would do it a little differently. But I really loved, this was a weird thing I threw in for fun because I figured it could give me like the salt and stuff, but little instant miso packets, the miso soup packets. I put those in my water bottle and I would leave them for like 15 minutes. And then there's like little bits of seaweed coming through my soft flask.
I know that there's people watching. They're just like, but we like it. We like miso. We've done that
it during Wham.
Yeah, during Wham and stuff. During some of the bigger races, like a hot miso broth, or I mean, I'm assuming if you left it in your soft flask for 15 minutes, I don't know if it was hot or if it was just body
nice
warm.
And warm.
Yeah, but like a hot miso broth or something in the middle of the night during long efforts is like perfect.
Salty goodness.
Salty goodness.
So good.
It's interesting. It's worth noting to people who want to do an effort like this. There's calories and there's that science of how we need calories, but there's foods like, for me, miso, that I think, and I don't know the science behind those kind of foods, but if you know, if you've done a lot of these kind of runs, you know that a food like that is maybe the packet's only 35 calories, but I felt so good after consuming that miso soup. It didn't even make sense that it would be so few calories. So I think that it's worth sort of knowing what you do well with. Like I knew I do well with soup in ultras. And so that's sort of why I brought them. And I think I would bring a lot more of those too. They're not very heavy. And if it uplifts your spirit, it's probably worth it.
I mean, we had Adam Campbell on after he ran Hard Rock one year where he had major stomach issues and just survived off of ginger chews. Like he had a ginger chew an hour, which is, as far as calories is concerned, it's nothing.
Very little.
Nothing. But the dude managed to finish with that. And I'm not saying people should go out there and finish their big efforts of ginger chews and miso broth. But, you know, if it tastes good and your body wants it, then who knows?
Yeah.
With unsupported, you mentioned that unsupported is difficult and dangerous on your recent post. What makes unsupported more difficult and what makes it dangerous?
Well, you really have to plan well. Once you get out there, what you have is all you have. And so if you don't plan well, then you're either going to have to drop out, or you might need to be rescued, or you might just be really uncomfortable for a long time. And I think that's why it probably isn't best for people who are new to the sport, unless we're talking about maybe a shorter distance kind of FKT that's unsupported. But the longer it gets, there's a lot of unknowns that are probably good to build up to. So, I mean, I've run the Wonderland Trail unsupported a number of times now. That's 93 miles. And I think that's a good sort of distance to practice on if you're proficient at the 100-mile distance as in a race. But it's also dangerous because if something happens to you out there, there's not necessarily anybody who's going to know where you are or that you're hurt. And that's why I have a spot device. But there's potential that I could hurt myself or be attacked by an animal and not be able to call for help. And so if you had crew, they'd be like, hey, she didn't come into that spot, they start looking for you. So it's definitely something that one should be experienced and know the risk. And knowing the Tahoe Rim Trail as well as I do, I think that really helps with the risk.
I think it's good to make that clarification because we will have a lot of people that watch this show and are inspired to find a trail, whether it's the Tahoe Trail or something near them that they want to take on for themselves. And there's certainly a level of expertise that's required to do something like unsupported. Let's get to a couple more live questions. I see that they're piling up there.
Yeah, you were just mentioning your spot tracker, and Deb in the chat room was asking, running a solo unsupported FKT, did you have people following along via spot check to make sure that you were okay?
I had a few people following more for verification purposes. I think it's important if you're going to set an FKT to get the proof and to make sure that you have some verification for it. So I'd given the link to probably like 3 different friends, and they were tracking me. I suppose if I stayed in one spot long enough, they might start getting worried, but I don't think any of them would worry about me out there. They're like, she's probably just sleeping. So yeah, it's a really good tool to have. I actually think that everybody should have some sort of emergency beacon. And the InReach Explorer that Garmin makes, it used to be a different company, but you can send texts through it too. So I could send a text through my phone app that goes through the satellites, even if I didn't have phone reception. So that's like a huge tool to use out there if you need it.
Yeah, and they even make the small, like mini ones now that even in the most basic function can get some sort of signal out. And we have a lot of friends that use those, and I think they're totally worth it, especially if you're doing this backcountry type stuff.
Yeah. We have all of our coach in the chat room right now. David Roach is in the chat room yelling all caps. Candice is a legendary, amazing human, so tough and talented and fast and strong and smart. We agree, David.
We agree. Shout out to David and his new podcast too. Swap. Go listen.
Yeah, his podcast is amazing. I've been listening to it. I love that the shorter version too is sort of cool, but I would totally love it, David, if you did a longer one.
I know. We've had him on the show a number of times too, and I feel like we could talk to David for hours and hours and hours. So I'm really surprised that they're only doing like a 30-minute podcast, because a part of me is like, I just want to listen for like 3 hours.
Just like nonstop.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you encountered out there on this one. So you're close to the trail. You have run it multiple times. You know, like every foot of it. You host a race on the trails. During your unsupported FKT, what were the lows like? Because we all encounter lows, and you've probably encountered them multiple times in your myriad of race experiences and adventures and stuff like that. How did they compare to other lows? How did you manage to push through them during this attempt? And what are some of the experiences that you pulled from this FKT that might be different from others?
Well, one thing actually that I've learned from David is if you're going to do something big, make sure that you do something that you really care about and you're really invested in and you're excited about. And so I think if I had not gone into this excited, those lows I would have dropped out at some point and hitched a ride back to my car. But I was so excited, even when things were hard, about continuing to see more of the trail at like different times of day. Because I basically started at the same point that I had started in November, but I went the opposite direction. I was like, okay, this time I'm going the opposite way. I'll see different things and hopefully only be out for 2 nights. So I managed to do that. But I would say the first day, the hardest thing for me was I kept thinking about my family, and I was like, it was really hard. There was this guilt in me that I felt like they should be here. I should have them on a hiking trip. Like, why am I doing this for myself? Here I am alone. And it was like the 2 weeks I get out of the whole year, to do this. And I'm still feeling guilty. So I sort of put that in the back of my mind and just tried to use like the sacrifice that I put into training as motivation to keep going. Like if I give up now, I've put so much into this, and I knew they wanted to see me finish. Yeah. So I pushed through that mental piece, and then I just had a lot of pain from like my pack, the weight of it. I had sharp pain in my left shoulder. And it didn't have a waist strap. So all the weight of the water and the calories to begin with was just heavy down on the shoulders. And I could tell that it would be really important to not pound too hard on the downhills too, with that much weight on my back. So there was a lot of calculation early on and pain, and just like, it's okay. This, it's just pain. There's a difference between like pain that's going to be temporary and a pain that maybe would be a longer term issue. And this was more just serious discomfort. Yeah. So I think later on, by the time I got to South Lake, 100 miles in, I knew I was going to finish no matter what. And at that point, it was just managing like severe blisters. And oddly enough, I just got this intuition to take off my socks. So I took off my socks and I ran sockless, which I never do. It was really weird. It's like, it felt like I was running barefoot sort of, because I could feel the rocks.
I want to show my jaw dropping here.
I know, my toes are like actually just doing this right now.
I'm thinking of the light, dusty powder type dirt that's out there, and I'm going, Candice, what are you doing? Candice, is this hallucination? What is this?
It's so bad. Okay, but see, the crazy thing, this is part of the problem of running an FKT this big without preparation, in that if I had come out from home with all the stuff I needed, I would have come out with gaiters. But I bought these gaiters at Alpenglow that wrapped around the front and Velcroed on like this, and it became so bad, I guess they were a little tight, it created this huge bump on the front of my leg that I could barely stand to touch. So I had to take the gaiters off. So all the sand was going in my shoes. Oh, no. But the point, it was just like one thing after another. But once I took off the gaiters, that pain slowly went away. And then oddly enough, taking off my socks took the worst of the blister pain away. I did get more blisters probably because of it. But when you have large blisters forming on the balls of your feet, it's just every step, right? It's not just when your shoe rubs a little on the outside. So taking those socks off, oddly enough, like did the trick. I don't know why or how, but I ran the rest of the way in, just like squishy, squashy, squishy.
I want to just emphasize that the squishy, squashy was probably you stepping on your own blisters. Is that the sound? Oh, man.
Yeah, and it was really hot, so I was sweating in my shoes, so it was like moist and like, ugh, yeah, it was gross.
So again, I think this is another great opportunity to remind our live viewers, like, Candice is a trained professional. She has done this many, many times. So when she takes her socks off at mile 150, it's because she knows what she's doing. I'm blown away with what your feet must have been like towards the end there. I think you actually did a post where you're like, squeamish eyes look away. Here comes some of the feet photos and stuff like that.
Well, I kept kicking rocks. So my left big toe, I think it wasn't connected to my brain through the whole run, because that was a toe that always kicked a rock. Like whenever I started to relax, it would be like chunk into a rock. So that toe was like, I could just feel like the toenail peeling off, and it was horrible.
Anyway, I have a feeling some of those toenails
tough.
are gonna be gone here in probably a couple months. Classic ultra story of toenails be lost.
Everybody in the chat room's like, I'm gonna run sockless this weekend.
Yeah, I know. That's as soon as I was like, this is what I imagine is going to happen. Is like, oh, my feet are hurting. I'm going to take my socks off and run, and then we're just going to see bloody foot photos all over the internet.
Just socks everywhere on the trails.
Just see single socks on the trails. Oh, someone listened to the podcast. That's what happened. Let's get to some of these live questions. Crazy. Again, we've got a bunch of them.
Question from Brian. Brian says, did you set intermediate/stage goals for individual TRT sections to help with motivation and performance evaluation?
This is a great question.
So did you have mini goals throughout?
Yeah, a little bit. Having run it now before and knowing each section, I feel like pretty intimately, I sort of knew areas I could push. And I knew that having the hardest section near the end would hopefully mean I wouldn't lose time at the end, because I would have had to go slow through Desolation Wilderness early and late. And I figured late I'll probably need to go a little slower through that. But like 100, my goal was to do the first 100 miles in around 30 hours. So the plan was to sort of take it a little bit easier. And then I had thought I could do the last 70 in like 25 hours. And I think that I just underestimated how tough the night would be, because the nights were through some really technical sections, and I think I just had to slow down more than I'd planned. So I lost a few hours. I ended up finishing in 60:47. But I was really hoping to get that mid 50s. I really only broke it down though, sort of thinking of it in 100 miles. But the whole time I was doing math in my head, because I really, really wanted to get under 60 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you were able to do in the amount of time that did you have like a set schedule where like, if I'm not going to reach X point by X time, then that's it. And maybe I'll try it another time and come back to it. Did you have any of that sort of mindset, or was it like, I'm going to finish it no matter what? If it takes longer than the 65 it took me in December, then I'll just keep going.
Yeah. I was going to finish it no matter what.
No matter what.
I feel like if you're going to do something, I think it's worth doing it no matter the time, you know? And so for me, it was just important. I would have been stoked to get another round, you know, of the whole lake. Was a secondary goal. I would have been really disappointed if it had been over, if I hadn't been able to get the fastest time. But I definitely, it was just as important to me to finish the whole thing as it was to set any time.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is that you've been very outspoken with recognition in this sport and making sure that it's equal for both men and women. And it's been really interesting to sort of see some of the headlines that you were referencing in the last few weeks, which were very male dominant and barely touched on some of the women's records that have been set recently on FKTs and stuff like that. How can we help? Like, how can we help give you a voice and give women and FKT efforts and stuff like that a voice, and really balance this out? Because it was surprising to see those headlines. I couldn't believe that those, yes, a lot of people are doing really amazing performances, but there shouldn't be anyone sitting in the shadows who had incredible accomplishments like yours.
Well, interestingly enough, like you said, I have a background as a race director and a racer. And so I do know the challenges of the media and race directors in covering everybody and trying to make things equal. So I really understand how it happens. And I think a lot of the bias that we see in media for the fastest times and the fastest times of men is a little bit of laziness, or sometimes they just don't know. But I think that there is a deeper bias that permeates our culture, and it also probably, we've the thing that's really come up lately, people of color not getting enough coverage as well. So I think that that's a very similar and at least as important of a topic too. Are Black people in this country also getting the coverage that they deserve, or is there a bias going on? And yes, I think from what I've seen, there's absolutely a bias in gender and a person's skin color. But in terms of gender, I've just, I think in this case with this FKT, it wasn't important to me to get recognition for it. But I think because this has happened to me so many times, I just saw the article, and Kyle set an amazing unsupported time. I'll give him full credit, and it needs to be covered. He's an amazing athlete. And unfortunately, the author of the article, just in passing, did a couple sentences on Helen's FKT, Helen Pelster, and my FKT. We had set new times that were 40 hours faster than the previous times in the same weekend as Kyle. So they actually mentioned us, but it was because they mentioned us that it looked so biased, because it was this tiny little bit in this big article about Kyle. It was just really odd. And I just was like, I've had enough, because I've finished races where there was just no recognition for the female finisher, even though, I was in third place overall or fifth place overall with Ultra Fjord in Patagonia. There was a motorcade for the first place guy. And I remember coming into town thinking, I wonder if they're going to do that for me. And there's nothing. I was like, it was okay with me at the time, but it just doesn't seem right. And so having two girls that I'm raising, I just really don't want them to grow up in a world where they don't feel like their accomplishments is important. Because my first reaction actually to this article, it was in Runner's World, was, well, at least I got a mention. And then I was like, that's a bad way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you said something about this too. Like, as someone who's a fan of the sport, it doesn't matter the person really. It's like you read that headline, just go, didn't Candice also just set the FKT unsupported as well? Like, Kyle Curtin's time, yes, deserves all the credit. And I have Google searches pulled up and his name is all over the place, and Kyle crushed it out there. It was really weird to see the headline not say Kyle and Candice and Helen and all these people did this amazing thing on the look at all these people doing the amazing thing.
The women's accomplishments in that particular article felt like an afterthought, or it felt like I feel like I have to mention this because if I don't, then I'm going to get attacked type thing, versus actually doing either not mentioning it at all and doing a separate article or doing a better job with equity there.
So we truly
please keep speaking up.
Yes. As someone who's a fan, of course, anytime that you speak up, it helps us see how we can also help speak up. And I think it's incredibly important right now. We've been trying to use Ginger Runner Live a lot in the last few months as we learn more and see more and are trying to do more. And it's been really eye-opening for us. So you keep doing what you're doing, Candice, because it's really helping a lot of people. And
if we can ever help you, we're always here. I look up to you because you are a female race director in the sport that's heavily male dominated. And as mentioned at the top of the show, you were one of the very first female ultra runners that I was familiar with. And
So if you ever need to vent, don't hesitate to say, hey, can I come on Ginger Runner Live and spend 45 minutes? We'll all vent with you because we'll probably be shouting from the same rooftops.
Well, and you did say, hey, you said what can people do? And I think just having it in your mind and being aware of it is really all you can do right now. Sure. And if you see something, speak up like I did. I think for me, it was hard because I didn't want people to think, oh, she wants attention. Because I was sort of the last, if I wanted attention, I would have had a crew out there. I would have had all this stuff. And really, I was doing it for myself. So I think that we have to become a little fearless in speaking up for women and speaking up for people of color and or anybody, that's maybe that we see where something should be done. And if we can get anything out of, the last month and a half and the protests and all this, I think we can learn that our voice does matter. And it is important to express ourselves when we see things that don't seem right, injustices in the world. And there's certainly worse, this is just a small piece of the puzzle. It's not a big injustice that happened to me, but I did feel like it was something that should be talked about publicly.
Yeah. Well, Candice, we absolutely appreciate everything that you're doing for the sport, both as a race director, as an athlete, as an adventurer, as an outspoken individual. You're an amazing athlete, and we can't wait to see what's next. Do you feel, I hate these types of questions because it's always...
I hate these questions, but
I'm going to ask them anyways. But I'm just curious, based off of sort of how you've described your experience over the last, over the unsupported FKT, do you feel like there's room for you to go back and to better your time? Did you feel like you put it all out there over the course of that experience, or do you think that there's some wiggle room?
I think I really did the best I could at that time with what I knew. So I don't regret anything, but I do think I could go out and do it faster, unsupported. I'm really interested in the supported time too, because I think it would be fun to go after, and even if I don't get it, it might just, having a few people out there to support me. How fast can I do it? I do feel like I'm able to do pretty well at the close to 200-mile range, because we didn't hit on this, but I didn't sleep at all. Like, it was crazy. I tried 3 times and just lie there. So I kept going. I was just like, okay, fine. So I would be curious to do it. I would be curious to do it supported, just for fun. Like, if I don't get it, fine,
Right. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens next, what unfolds with you. And I hope recovery continues to go quite well and the body bounces back. I'm sure the feet are probably thankful for some socks. Or maybe you aren't wearing socks anymore. Maybe that was the why do I wear socks? That's it. But we appreciate you so much, Candice, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us on tonight's show.
Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Where can people find more information about what you're up to next, or more information on your races that you're hosting, virtual or in person? Where can people go to find out more of this stuff about Candice?
I usually post stories of my adventures at CandiceBurt.com. And for the races, you can go to destinationtrailrun.com. And you could probably just Google my name and find all that stuff if you want to be lazy. But yeah, those are the 2 places.
Awesome. We cannot thank our wonderful guest, Candice Burt, enough for joining us on the show and talking about the unsupported FKT, which, by the way, oh God, I just had it pulled up. I had to make sure. 2 days, 12 hours, 47 minutes, 34 seconds is the new unsupported FKT around the Tahoe Rim Trail, which was over the 4th of July weekend. So a couple days, couple extra hours out there, just crushing it on the finely dusted Tahoe Rim Trail without socks. Gosh, can't believe it. We are going to move into our after show. Our after show will feature our guest tonight, Candice, and that is for Patreon subscribers only. So if you are a Patreon supporter, we'll see you in the after show here in just a couple minutes. If you would like to join us for all of our after shows or have access to previous and future after shows, just go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to all that stuff. And for $3, you get our daily live stream. And you get to join us and have coffee with us and ask questions about gear and all that good stuff. We talk about it every day, all day. Crew member of the week.
Yeah.
We like to end each of our episodes by recognizing a member of the community who goes above and beyond, goes out there and crushes it. We call them our GR crew members of the week. Kim, who is our GR crew member this week?
This week's GR crew member of the week is Scott Soule. And Scott said, I was honored to lead a cancer survivor and family up Rainier to Camp Muir. She was a joy to be with and to hear her recovery story. And Scott posted a beautiful photo on, I can't speak right now,
okay,
on our Patreon Facebook page as well.
Thank you, Scott, and congratulations on being our GR crew member of the week. And I believe Scott is also doing an additional organizing of an event to raise money.
Yes.
He does really great things with shoes for people who are in need of shoes, running shoes, donations, and stuff like that. So, Scott, thank you for doing what you're doing. Always a great member of the crew member right there. Cool. That's it for today's show. We thank you so much for joining us for Ginger Runner Live, episode 317 with Candice Burt. We'll see you next Monday for another live show with another guest for a lot of fun. And that's it. Get out there. Train as hard as you can. Virtually race harder and party the hardest. We'll see you guys next week. Or we'll see you in the after show.
Bye.
Goodbye.